I haven't seen her in a long time.
All right, everybody, so we're going to start in just about 3 minutes here, so if everybody wants to gather around, grab your seats, we'll start.
One of our very best workers. Ron always volunteered for whatever needed to be done if he thought he had a way. He paid for it, and this community, the businesses, the township, Groveland Township, and Brandon Township, in the village, have been many people have contributed one
As well. Well, I'm sure the last thing that, as humble as Ron was, the last thing he would want is to have a big party that was all about him. But I think that Ron would enjoy this a lot, and probably is looking down on us today. I was reminded of the story of Moses when he came to the mountain and he heard a voice and God approached him and he went to step forward and God said, you need to take off your sandals because this is holy ground. And I think that everywhere Ron walked was holy ground. And it wasn't because of who Ron was, but it was because of the people that he might encounter every time that he walked, those he ran into. Everybody mattered to Ron, and every relationship mattered to Ron. So today we're going to hear your stories. I'll share a couple thoughts, and when I'm done, in about an hour or so, no, I'm just kidding, we'll allow you time to share as well. Let's pray. Well, God, we praise you for the great company of all those who have finished their course in faith and now rest from their labors. We praise you for all those dear to us whom we name in our hearts in these moments. Especially we praise you for Ron, whom you've graciously received into your presence. To all of us who long for Ron's walking with us again, we grant your peace. Lord, let your perpetual light shine upon us and help us so to believe where we have not seen, that your presence may lead us through our years and bring us at last with them to the joy of your home, not made with human hands, but eternal in heaven through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I want to give us a scripture for some context and give you a few words. I know Close Family was able to go to the actual funeral service for Ron, and I want to give you a few thoughts from my message from that service because I think it's still pertinent today. This comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verses 35 and 36. Jesus replied, "My light will shine for you just a little longer. Walk in the light while you can, so the darkness will not overtake you. Those who walk in the darkness cannot see where they are going. Put your trust in the light while there is still time. Then you will become children of light." I think Ron had a lot of lessons to teach in his life, and of course I only knew him for 5 years, and boy, I learned a lot in 5 years. I was blessed for it. But as this scripture tells us, I think Ron would teach us to walk in the light of faith. Jesus often spoke of himself as the light of heaven, the light that dispels darkness and brings forth light. Jesus showed light to everyone he encountered in his humility, by his compassion, in his mercy and his forgiveness. He showed undeserving love to those in the world who didn't often receive it. To walk in the light of faith is to love when it's hard, to look to God's word for the way to walk when it's difficult. To walk in the light of faith is each day is to walk as if your next step is in heaven, as Ron did. If Ron had one more lesson to teach us, I think it would be to walk in the light of faith. Number 2, I think it would be to live by the light of faith. Jesus used every moment on purpose. There was no wasted moment, good or bad. There was always a lesson to be learned and a lesson to teach. Always someone to lift up with an encouraging word, someone to help with a loving hand, or just someone to listen to with an open heart. Living by the light of faith means that you know who you are and whose you are. It means being honest with ourselves and with God the times that we are distant and the times that we leave little room for faith in our life. Ron knew the scripture well, that we are all sinners saved by grace. I wonder how often when Ron walked what his talks were about. Maybe it was the times that he had fallen short himself, because Ron was not perfect, and he sought the Lord's forgiveness. So Ron had a lesson for us to live by the light of faith. And lastly, is to believe in the light of faith. Verse 36 says, "Believe in the light while you have the light, so that you may become children of God." Believing in the light of faith means seeing where we are going. It means a place prepared, as Ron has now entered into. It means to be lifted up into the glorious light, the light that was with us and is with us the whole step of the way. To spend eternity with God and those we love who have gone before us is our view and hope for our future. Jesus also said in John 14, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God and believe also in me. For where you go, there are many rooms." See, Ron's life was never about quantity. All the things he did and all that he had accomplished is so great, and we could go on for, 92 years, right? There was never a wasted moment, because Ron was about living a life of quality. Ron always tried to give and to live up to God's best for him. And if he had one more lesson to teach, it would be to believe in the light of faith. For I am happy here and only long to see you again. So as we consider Ron's life, may we know that it is about walking in the light of faith. It is about living by the light of faith, and it is about believing in the light of faith. As I was thinking about Ron, and Luann asked me to just give a couple things before we kick this off and let you guys just share. You know, I've only known him for 5 years, but it didn't take long to see the man he was. I understood as the story goes, he was considering going back to their home church, Mount Bethel. when I came here. Thankfully, he didn't. I remember when I got here and shortly after we made a few changes, and Ron knew how to speak his mind, as you know. He may not have liked all them, but Ron understood that the church was not about him. I loved every year when he gave the Bibles in memory of Howard Grovenstein, as we will do tomorrow. Ron enjoyed men's groups and dinners. He worked on probably most committees in the church in his time here. He was always lending a hand. I remember only a few months before his passing, we were able to be in a Bible study together, a difficult Bible study about some of the issues that the world is facing today. And Ron knew that all that mattered was love. Loving each other. I was blessed to walk with him a couple times in his journey through town, and every morning when I come into the office, I still look over to the window. But now I have the pleasure of looking over to the porch and seeing Luann and Dan usually having their morning coffee.
As you go.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm better for knowing Ron, and I know that many of you are. I will be forever grateful for his impact on my life, and I will miss him always, as we all do here as well. Amen. Okay, so we're going to open it up?
Yep.
Excellent. We're going to open it up. And would you? Oh, good. Would you like
to take my shoes off? I don't want to pass you, but I'm Brian Scramlin. Uncle Ronnie was my great uncle in more ways than one. When I first heard about Uncle Ronnie, he was like a character out of a Mark Twain novel. Because all the stories I heard were from my dad, who was his nephew. Uncle Ronnie was 10 or 11 years older than him, so he taught him all kinds of neat tricks. And then Uncle Ronnie, you see him once or twice a year because you see him at Grandpa Sutton's birthday party, and maybe once in a while at Grandma's house on a Sunday afternoon. When I moved back home from Indiana in year 2000, Wednesday night was my Grandma Scramlin's date night. I would take her to get groceries, and we'd go out to dinner. And sometimes Uncle Ronnie would check on her 2 or 3 times a week, and our paths would cross. And I'd always have to read Grandma the Citizen because I'd have to see what letter Uncle Ronnie had wrote this week to the Citizen. In our relationship, it grew. We were close. But in the year 1988, at my Grandpa Sutton's funeral, the Masons performed a memorial service for my Grandpa Sutton. And the seed was planted in the back of my mind about joining the Masons. There is something in my mind. There was a seed. I learned at the time that Grandpa Sutton was a Mason, Uncle Ronnie was a Mason, my Uncle Russ Hubbard was a Mason, and later I learned with my wife that my father-in-law, Doug Biggs, was a Mason. So I figured it can't be bad. 4 guys that I loved and respected were Masons. So I talked to Uncle Ronnie, and he said I should pursue it. Every degree I took in Masons, Uncle Ronnie was there. It made the trip from Mortonville to Bay City. And the night I became a Master Mason, he gave me this ring. It was Uncle Paul's ring, which had been Grandma Hemingway's brother. And today, we went and gave me 2 more rings, and Uncle Ronnie said the only person that would understand them would be Brian. And so that made me tear, which is going to make me cry again. But I can't think of enough said. Uncle Ronnie cared enough. People ask, what do you remember about going through the Mason ritual? All I remember is when it was done, Uncle Ronnie was there. I need to pass them.
Okay. So my name is Josh Stramlin, and Uncle Ronnie would have been, I think, my great-great-uncle. And so I'm obviously not the smallest person, I know that, but I was much larger not that long ago, and everybody was saying, well, how did you decide that you wanted to lose weight? Well, I could actually attribute it to Uncle Ronnie, because at a Christmas party, I lived in Wisconsin for the last 2 years, up until about 6 weeks ago. I moved back to Michigan. So I was living in Wisconsin at the time, and I saw Uncle Ronnie at the party. I walked right up to him and I say, hey, Uncle Ronnie, Merry Christmas. He's like, yeah, Merry Christmas to you. And plain as day, he looks at me and he said, oh man, I see somebody really enjoying all that Wisconsin cheese. I was like, okay, maybe it's time to shed a couple pounds. So, because he noticed it. So I mean, you could never worry about where he stood. But all jokes aside, I mean, and to this day, I can hear him anytime you would walk up to him at a party. He would always call everybody young, because when you're 90, pretty much everybody's younger than you. So he would say, well, how are you, young man? And how are you, young lady? And yeah, I mean, he's just an amazing man. He gave me the kick in the butt that I needed. He probably didn't know that, but he did. And by the way, I was enjoying the Wisconsin cheese. It's very good. But that's all I have to say. So if somebody else wants to step up, and I don't know if anybody else is going to say anything. Don't all rush. Luann, do you want me to put you on the spot? Okay.
Kayleen Hodgkin, I'm Bob MacArthur. We're here mainly to, Kayleen is the worthy matron, and I'm the worthy patron of the Eastern Stars. And we are here today to pay tribute to a special man of our community, Ron Sutton. A true example of a dedicated Mason and Eastern Star. Ron was an Eastern Star member, attained life membership. He served our chapter in many different ways. He served as worthy patron 3 times, which is the highest office for a man in the order. He and his beautiful wife, Mary Lou, also served as chairman of our special occasion activities, which were receptions and honorings of special friends, and back in those days, they were at least 200 in attendance. They loved to do all the nice decorations and special glassware and dishes. They made our chapter beautiful to all the distinguished guests. Ron has, for all those years, looked out for the good of our order. He never let anyone overlook the chapter while he was serving on the many community projects he represented. Ron also spoke up to the Mason brothers that were not Eastern Stars when they would not recognize how changes might affect our chapter. Ron's support was always on the monetary level. Every time he paid his dues, he was there always with a donation for whatever was needed. And when he decided that he should not have so many cookies, he would just donate money and say that they are not good for me at this age. We are saddened at his loss and would like to acknowledge his importance to us by creating a scholarship in his name for a graduate going to a trade school or something like that. We will miss him, but we know you are still watching over us. I do have, I thought I was going to avoid this, but the hand won't let me go with just a little bit. But there is a couple stories with Ron. I have been in the community for most of my life. I go back to, I think, the Sinclair station at the corner, owned by his dad. So I've been around for a little while. But, and I knew Sutton family for a long time, all the brothers and the grandkids and all of that. But when I never really had much association with Ron initially. He was always a busy guy and somebody you looked up to. And at my level, I avoided him because he was, he's a smart guy. And like they say, he would definitely let you know if things weren't going in the way that he would like to see it go. But I retired from the fire department, but we had a barn fire. It was in the late 70s over on Oakwood Road. And I was overcome with heat exhaustion and smoke. And I was younger, they made me just sit down for a while, and I decided I was ready to go again. And they decided that I couldn't do that, so they put me in a pickup truck and was going to take me down to the hospital. Well, I made them stop at my house. Obviously, Karen could hear it on the radio that somebody was going, so I would be in deep trouble if I didn't stop there first. And she asked me, and I'm telling her how I'm okay, things are fine. I said, I don't know why I'm going, but this damn fire board member made me go. And at that time, I didn't know Ron well enough to even talk about him like that. But that was one of the first things where I had contact with him, and that was not in an extremely positive note. The second time he was on the fire authority at a board meeting that we had requested to get the jaws of life, extrication tools that we wanted to get. And the board was all in favor of it, but Ron got up and spoke and changed their mind. They were a $10,000 item, and again, this is back early 80s, maybe late 70s, and then that's a heck of a lot of money for a small department to spend. And he convinced them to vote no on it. And we were like shocked, because we all knew very important equipment that we needed. At the next board meeting, it wasn't even on the agenda. Ron got up and made a motion to approve that purchase of those. And he said, you know what, I went to work and I told my fellow workers what I had done. And he said, they demanded that I go back and change that. So he stood up in front of everybody and indicated that he had made a mistake and that he was wrong. And that was in front of all of us, all the firemen and the board. And that has stuck with me for an awful long time. That somebody of that importance could stand up in front of everybody and admit he was wrong. And that was a big deal. My next encounter was with Ron. This is all fire department stuff, so I don't want to bore you with too much with it. But it was several years later we got into the ambulance business, and we transported Mary Lou a few times. And back then we were just starting out. We had our first ambulance that we had bought. The thing was like a lumber wagon. It was used, it wasn't rickety, but it gave a rough ride. And we had transported her a few times to the hospital. So, and at one point we were finally at the funds, we were able to get new ambulances. And the first night, I don't know if Dave Boris was here, but it was later in the evening, it was after dark actually. I said, we have got to go show Ron this truck. Because he had been beating me up for some time about not getting appropriate equipment. And when we pulled in the yard, Ron come out and he opened up the back door. It's all brand new, bright lights. And he got in the back with us and sat and talked for a considerable amount of time about the value of the truck, what we were going to do with it. Obviously, as everybody knows, he didn't just let you off the hook. He would question the daylights out of it. And as we were about ready to leave, Ron says, why doesn't it say Ortonville on the outside of that truck? And we sat there like dumbfounded. I actually, Dave Boris myself, we got out I walked over there and it says Brandon Fire Department, and it didn't say Ortonville on it. So it took about 2 weeks. Every one of the new ambulances all had Ortonville on it from that point on. And again, I think the significance of that as he touched me was his concern for the community and the importance to recognize it. Several things that I've done with him, I walked with him quite often, and I got on the planning commission, and I was really hoping, because he would love to beat up those things and discussions, and I am able to work with them, with the planning commission on developing the park that he so much cared for. So there, things are going on in his name that most people don't know, but thank you very much.
Come up and say anything.
Everything was good until Dan came. We spent a lot of time together, Ron and Mary Lou, Sherry and I, and the kids up in a cabin up north that Sherry's grandfather had for years. I can't believe we spent a whole week up there in a one-room cabin, Grandpa and Grandma, Ronnie and Mary Lou, Sherry and I, and the kids. I can't believe we got along like that. Ron was really good. Every time I had a project at home, Ron was there to help me. I didn't have to beg, borrow. He was there. We built our house on Lease Road, had to paint the whole inside, he was there. I never had a problem. I did have one issue with Ron. He and I went north to the cabin, and we had a bunch of trees standing close to the cabin, and we had to get the trees cut down. We cut the wood up. I had my trailer, and we loaded the trailer, headed home. We got about 40 miles away, and Ron says, I forgot to do something. I thought, oh no, where's this going? So I opened the window in the bathroom, I forgot to close it. I said, why? Oh, we need to turn around and go back. I said, oh no. We turned around, we had a trailer load of wood in the truck, loaded. I said, okay, so we turned around, went back. He was a good guy. We had a lot of fun together, and Sherry, we had dinner, we had him out for dinner a lot in the last couple of years. And, I could never say anything bad about him. He always worked with me, and we never had any big fights, and we always got along good. So I was thankful he was my father. Thank you.
Grandpa Sutton was my grandpa, and I was not planning on speaking today, as you can tell, but I thought he deserves it. He deserves to have every one of you here today. He deserves all of the recognition that he's got over the last few months. So I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that I said, actually Pastor Brian said on my behalf at his funeral back in December. My sister, Nikki, who couldn't be here today, my cousin Morgan and I each were able to say a few things, and I'm just going to reiterate my words. So I apologize if you watched live. You're just going to get the same speech you got then, but I think it's worth repeating. Just off the cuff, my grandpa was an amazing person, as you all know. I've learned more about him in the past 6 months than in my prior, however many years that I have been living. I'm not going to say a number. But he is just, I mean, the history that he encompassed, and just hearing the stories about him surviving the Depression, and hearing about how his family had their house taken away, and what that must have been like for a little kid, and just to overcome that is just absolutely amazing to me. I look at my kids today, and for them, not being in air conditioning is like the worst thing that they could possibly imagine, or their phone running out of battery. And so you just think about some of those things, and it's just absolutely amazing to me what he overcame, and I mean, the life that he made for himself, and for my mom and for my aunt, and the grandpa that he was to his 4 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. We could not have asked for a better grandpa. I wish that we had had a chance to hear more about the stories when we had the opportunity, but I really appreciate everything that everyone has shared so far. It's been just the best gift that we could possibly get to hear all these amazing things that he's done. And you know, if you were to go up in his apartment right back here, you would see, I mean, the man categorized every piece of his history, and it's so amazing to be able to look through things that he has kept for decades and decades and decades, and it's been just a really fun experience to see all of the things that he has been able to do in his life. So with that being said, I'm just gonna speak quickly and reiterate what Pastor Brian spoke on my behalf at his funeral. So I could write a book about the wonderful qualities my grandpa possessed, but I don't have to, because everyone who's ever had any interaction with him already knows. He was admired and respected. He was caring and dedicated to his family, his friends, and his community. He was strong and resilient. He was thoughtful. Once my grandma passed away, he took on the gifting duties, and he never missed sending a birthday or anniversary card to anyone in the family. He was a historian who knew the background of almost everything in the area. Every holiday we were together, it was customary that once the meal was finished, the adults would all start into these stories about what was going on around Ortonville, what had happened to so-and-so, who had recently passed away, whatever became of that one person that so-and-so graduated with. He could remember everything about everyone in their family. One of my favorite memories of my grandpa is that once when I was in 6th grade, he was invited to speak to a different 6th grade class about the history of Ortonville, and I got to come and sit and listen. It was such a cool experience and made me realize how special my grandpa was. I was and am so proud to be his granddaughter. I know Morgan is, I know my sister is, and I know Jared is proud to be his grandson. And while we will take time to mourn our loss, I think the best thing we can do to honor his legacy is to follow in his footsteps. Stop and have a conversation with someone, even if you don't think you have time. Teach your children to respect others, even if you have differing opinions. Share a story, share a laugh, share a smile. We are all better people because we had Grandpa Sutton in our lives, and for that, I'm grateful. Thank you.
Uncle. And I just want to share a cute story with you. About 2 years ago, we were coming back from Florida, and in northern Kentucky, we had some trouble with our fifth wheel. So my husband is underneath it, trying to repair it. And a very nice gentleman walked up to us and said, "Do you need any help?" And I said, "No, I think we're good. He's just about through." He started to walk away, and he turned around and he said, "Well, where are you going?" And I said, "Michigan. We live up near Tawas now. But I grew up in Goodrich." And I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, south of Flint. And that's when I actually said, "Oh, I'm from Goodrich." And he goes, "Well, a town called Ortonville." And my mouth dropped open, and I said, "Ortonville?" I said, "I bet you know my uncle," because we always say everybody knew Uncle Ronnie. He goes, "Oh, yeah, I know Ron. I knew all your family, the Suttons." And so we visited a little bit, and then we left, and we got back on the road. And my husband had crawled out from under the trailer, so I was trying to tell him what had transpired. And I was telling him, and he just looked at me, he's like, "Really? Are you kidding me?" He says, "Every time we go someplace, you find somebody that knows one of your relatives in Ortonville." And he was so special, and I loved him, and we're really going to miss him.
Uncle Ronnie's granddaughter. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your name right now, but you said something that jogged my memory. So I was a radio reporter in Wisconsin, and one of the stories I did was I interviewed Uncle Ronnie about growing up on a farm in the Great Depression. It's 35 minutes long. I asked 2 questions. But I have that audio, and I think what I'm going to do is I'll upload it online, and then Luann, if you want to share it on your Facebook page, it's very good to hear his voice. And when you said that you wish that you had some of those stories, there are some very good stories in there. And yes, he remembers everything to a T, but it'll be good to hear his voice. And like I said, it's right around 40 minutes. So I will share that, and we'll get that up in the next couple of days so we can all hear him again. So, all right.
A while before I got up here, because I knew there would be so many people wanting to talk about him. And I am sentimental, so sorry. Oh gosh. My husband Dave and I loved Ron. How I describe him? Oh, my name is Sharon Van Dust. Lived in Harvey Fletcher's warehouse for 47 years and moved to Wixom last August. I miss all of you in Ortonville. I do love my new home, and it has 2 showers, so that's awesome. No, Dave and I love Ron so much. How I describe Ron, a gentleman. Such a gentleman. Served on the trail committee. We knew I talked about this. He served on the trail committee with Dave, and he wanted that trail so badly, just like so many people. But such an awesome man. To be his age and to know how important that issue was for the community. But also his walks. Oh my gosh. Walked every day. And when I was in my car, after David passed, and I'd be driving my car, I'd put the window down and I just had to talk to him. And he just, all I could say, just an awesome, awesome man. So many memories. He will be missed. But boy, to live the life that he lived, and when I read about all the things that he accomplished, unbelievable. So that's really all I have to say, but just like everybody knows, he was a gentleman, he was wonderful, and we loved him so much, and as so many people did, and his family especially. Thank you.
The Old Mill Museum is open every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we will be dedicating the blacksmith shop at the September Fest, which is usually the last Saturday in September. Okay. And we invite you all to come at any time on Saturday, and we are going to have a little showing before too. So please keep us in your thoughts and prayers. And we loved having Ron there. He didn't miss a beat. Thank you very much.
And when I first came out here 13 years ago, Ron was still working at the funeral home. He worked for every funeral home in Ortonville. And I remember a couple months after getting here, how scared I was because he said he wanted to talk to me. Because I already knew what level he held in this community. And all he wanted to do was say at 79, I don't want to do another winter in the parking lot. I'm like, I get it. He was wonderful. I always enjoyed running into him. His wise and his sage counsel always had an impact on me. And when he said, well, Roy, I knew something big was coming. He just was a wonderful man, and I've been very blessed to have known him. Thank you.
How many people out here knew my Grandpa Sutton, my great-grandpa Sutton? And if you look up on the pictures up there, there's a picture of him and Uncle Ronnie. And I was about 15 years old, and it was Sunday afternoon. We're sitting on my grandma's porch, and my brother Kevin was just 5 or 6. He said, Grandpa Sutton, how come you don't have any hair? And Grandpa Sutton leaned back and said, well, when I was 16 years old, I got an orange stocking cap for Christmas. And I put that orange stocking cap on, and my hair started falling out. And I was at a Sutton reunion, and I looked around, today at a Sutton reunion, and I said, boy, I wonder where that stocking cap went. And I want to tell Luann and Sherry when they're going through stuff, if you find an annoying stocking cap, burn it.
My name is Wayne Wills. Ron has been a neighbor of mine for over 44 years. I live, for those of you who don't know, I live right on the corner of Church and Milk. I'm the one that has the really nice hedges. Everybody knows my hedges, and I also have a sycamore tree in my backyard. Everybody knows the tree. Well, for 44 years, Ron was my neighbor, but he moved twice. He lived with Mary Lou up the corner to the left, up Mill Street, and then when Mary Lou passed, then he went to live with Dan and Luann right here. So he was never more than 300 feet from me for 44 years. The first time I got to know Ron was when I was a junior in high school. We thought that we would like to move the senior prom for the junior prom away from the gym. So I went out to, I went to the superintendent of schools, Dr. Versnick at the time, and along with the other class officers, and we said, well, we'd like to go somewhere else. And Dr. Versnick says, well, no way, we're not going to let you leave the gymnasium for your prom. And he finally gave in. He says, okay, you got to go to the Board of Education. So I was all nervous. We went to the Board of Education, and beforehand I went to Ron and I said, Ron, what do I do? What do I do? And he says, don't worry about it. He says, you'll be just fine. So we up there, and he mentored me at the age of 16 on how to address the Board of Education professionally. And it was a wonderful thing, and it worked. And we went out to, what's the camp out here? Camp Rat for a couple, 3 years, and it was a wonderful time. The thing that I also like about Ron is that when I was the village president between 2010 to 2018, he was always available to me to counsel. And he would counsel, and I would go to him and I'd say, Ron, what about this, what about that? And he would say, Wayne, he said, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. And it worked, and it worked. And then a year ago, we went to Ron and said, Ron, we need you on council again. So the second time around, his family gave him and us the permission to let him run the council, and he did. And he won. He attended, the second time around, he attended one council meeting. And, you know, as Pat George and Melanie and I will remember, as new council members, and, you know, he said the right thing at the right time, very succinct, and he didn't ramble, he didn't need to make a lot of speeches and so on. He was always supportive of this community. So as I look around here, the legacy that all of us will leave at some time, because we're all not going to get out of this life alive. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. So Ron, to me, is not ever going to be past tense. Ron is still living. Ron is alive. It's not what Ron was or Ron used to be, but he is alive today. And every time we turn around this community, I see Ron. And I will continue to see Ron. And, you know, it's just a wonderful thing. And I think that each of us here will be able to carry on that legacy in one way or another. And I see each of you out here. Some of you are involved in all kinds of boards and community projects. So we need to keep that alive. Okay? Thank you.
And you see Ron again? I'll assure you, you'll probably be no further than 300 yards away.
Ron Sutton was a freshman in high school. We did a lot of things together. Most of them I can't talk about.
We heard about it.
Now, what you heard was just a rumor. Ron and I enjoyed a lot of the same things in life. We did a lot of the same things growing up. We appreciated a lot of the same things. Now I'm going to tell you the truth about Ron Sutton.
It's exactly as he's been presented today. He was one of my best friends, he still is. I love him like a brother, always have and always will. And anything that anybody has anything different to say, speak to me.
Who was the best golfer?
I was.
Well, he's not here.
I was his best man too. So anytime we think of Ron, we think of good things. That's the way that should be. Thank you.
First of all, I have to clarify, this is my walking stick. It came from my father-in-law's property in Atlanta, Michigan, from a pine tree that fell by our son Jared's deer blind after he had passed. And I wanted a piece of wood from it, and my Uncle Jig's uncle helped me whittle it, and I brought it home, and my dad apparently thought it was too big for me. So he took it over, and it has a lot of memories. And if you feel this, it is just wore completely smooth. And I think he cut it off at some time, and right now I'm finding it's just the perfect height. But so anyways, this is my walking stick, and it has history now. When he took it, I didn't know how I felt about it, and I said, I'll get back someday and I'll have a lot of history. I never dreamt how much it would have. I've got something to read. It's from Rayanne Harris Frazier. Her mom and dad, Ray and Trudy, were some of my mom and dad's oldest friends. The only thing I don't know about leaving the years you put in here. My parents and I met the Sutton family approximately 60 years ago when we moved to Ortonville. My father, Ray, along with Ron, served together on the Brandon School Board for many years. We all worshiped together for decades at the Ortonville United Methodist Church. Our families also socialized together quite often, so I have many stories and memories. But today I want to share my most personal memory with you. When my mother passed away a few years ago, I found myself having to purchase 2 cemetery plots in the Ortonville Cemetery the morning following her death. My father had dementia at the time and was not in a position to participate in the process. I had absolutely no experience with this sort of thing, but I made an appointment with a cemetery sexton and headed out to the cemetery. I was taken to the open, available section of the cemetery, and I was just standing there looking around trying to figure out how to make a permanent decision like that, when I looked up and Ron was walking towards me. He didn't know I would be there, and I didn't know he would be there, but he was probably the best person who could have arrived by my side at that point in time. I'll assume he was there to do his gardening and visiting, but for whatever reason, he arrived just in the nick of time, and I couldn't have been more appreciative of his guidance and support on that day. Thank you, Rayanne Harris Frazier. I kind of shot my wad at the funeral. I don't have the energy to do it again. I shared many of my dad's stories that he was so free to share with us. And everybody has said it so eloquently, I don't know what I could even add to it. My oldest niece, Nicole, Sherry Marie's oldest, used the word effortlessly as we were preparing for his funeral, and it just struck me that's the word I've been looking for years to describe my Grandpa Sutton. And she just said it in one word, effortlessly. He made everything look easy. And I've had time to think about it since then. And at some point in life, I believe he made the effort to be nice. He made the effort to be kind. he made the effort to be interested in others. He made the effort to be involved in the community, in his church, in sharing my lives, in Dan and Lee's lives, our grandkids. He was still going to any sports the great-grandkids had. He absolutely loved it. And by making that decision, it became effortless for him. That's who he was. And it's just a void that will never be filled, and Sherry and I are just so absolutely blessed to have had this gentleman show us the right things. And just on a little side note, my grandkids could never figure out how come great-grandpa lived in a garage. But thank you all for coming. What has meant so much is we know Dad's stories, but we're hearing things. It's like he had this whole secret life out there. We didn't know anything about. People walk by and they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry about your dad." I look at them, I don't have a clue who they are. But they would say, "Oh, is that the man with the big walking stick?" And I had nice conversations with him. He asked about me and how things were doing, and he was just interested. And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." And thank you for coming. Thank you very much.